All right. Shalom. Salama. Yemi. Oh yeah, this is Q2A. So shalom and Sia and Salama family. Um, Welcome to Q2A discussions. And today I wanted to talk about the African diaspora. The African diaspora. So I am waiting on someone who is a regular, I would say somewhat regular contributor um, to not just Q2UA, but also Covenant Awakenings. And I had explained to her, that it would be good to have a fresh insight in terms of really how folks are viewing the African diaspora from the African lens of where they may be at in the world. And so I wanted to kind of give a caveat to that because yesterday, right after um, Covenant Awakenings, um, I had spoken to this person, and I think you all know who who they are. I just want to make sure that they get the proper introduction um, as I make room for her to come on. I know, sometimes people don't get the notifications, and today was a little bit of a different day because um, doing some things with Q2A last night, some Q2A activities, and then waking on up and um, on this Good Friday. Um, this was a Passover day celebrated. This is why a death, especially an unlawful death at that time, well, you see what's happened and what caused us to be in our current disposition. And in our current disposition right now, it's not hard to see that we're in a very interesting time where we're seeing the idea of America, the idea of the American dream. And all these were their ideas. And in their ideas, they were the ones that had to make it work. They were the ones that had to come up with the plan to kidnap us because it was a daring and audacious plan. Shout out to Minister Teyu for They Always Knew Who We Were. That book is available on Amazon. I'm not able to share that in the chat because I am on my way over to Orlando this morning to see my dad and conduct some family business, as I have been blessed to have some time off today from my normal work routine. Just giving you all heads up. So it will be a lot longer than just um, my normal cutoff of 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And that's why I have the link posted, especially for our brothers and sisters on out there in the African diaspora. So let me talk about the African diaspora. So, of course, when we mention the African diaspora, especially here, I'm here in the United States, and I know we have some of our viewers and supporters of Q2UA all throughout the world, to include the Caribbean and Europe. And, North America, we have a bravado, and that bravado has been us. Let's just understand these dynamics. We have always been the dynamic. We have always been the bravado. We have always been the quote unquote the muscle. Whenever anything needed to be done, especially in America, you ought always call on us the muscle. And now, really, if you understand what's happening in the geopolitical frame, America is playing a very, very dangerous game that has not been um, very much calculated for today's sentiment of the quote unquote African American in the United States. The the patronization of patriotic, stimulus. Hey, we need you. Sign up for Uncle Sam. We'll take care of you. Sign up. Sign up. We'll do this. We'll do that. And now understand that all of these different mechanisms that would be utilized to create that force to get us involved. And the nonsense, let's just call it what it is. It's the nonsense. And then they'll label the nonsense with some sort of UN declaration and demarcation of war, of WMDs, and other fallacious and highly energized statements. And when you understand the historical conditions to everything that has happened geopolitically, understand that it was always meant to be a wartime circumstance. Because why? Oh, we only want peace. We do not want war. But if war comes, but if war happens, all of this vanity and these constructs of vanity, let's just call it the root. You could call it white supremacy, you could call it nationalism, you could call it whatever you want. It's just vanity. To try to make something appear more than. And at the root cause, that's what it is. They've always tried to make things appear more than this, more than that. And in this day and age, as these other countries have finally figured on out that they haven't been able to move not 1 foot without the help of black folks and African Americans. And now, with all this stuff, black folks don't have America's back. Black folks are choosing to ignore the rhetoric of we have to do it because it's our livelihoods. Have we all heard this? I've heard it. You're an American too. Don't worry about it. You're green in my eyes. That's the only color I see. That's a lie. There's no such thing as black or white. We're all Americans here. That's a lie. But the funny thing is that we wouldn't really push that narrative. That was the lie that was told to us because of the uncomfortable feeling of having to actually address the biggest elephant in the room that has been kicked down the can generationally. And they know that it's been kicked down the can generationally because, let's just face it, they're the ones that's been kicking it down the can. We have stated this for years. And I pray that now that Black people see all this, that we don't get and undergo willful, and that's what usually happens with us sometimes. We get willful amnesia because we see everything that they said and that they've done. Now it's uncovered. And it's not uncovered by any type of YouTube commentators from the likes of me sitting over here on the highways and byways of Tampa, Florida. The reality is everyone knew that this day was coming. And we have been planning for this day to come. Nobody could say that, oh, this is the first I've ever heard of it. No one can say that. Nobody can say that I never thought in a million years. Brother Asaph, I got the link if you want to jump on, Brother Asaph, and we'll have a nice, thoughtful, insightful discussion for our brothers and sisters here. I have it pinned. If you are able, I'm not really able to see down here. So sorry, family. I really can't get the glimpses of your comments that I would be able to do on a normal basis. But we've now seen, and I'm not even sure if this is true or not, of a certain tweet. And that's why I say I don't know the veracity if this was just a, tongue-in-cheek comment. But I do know that it's 245%, which is just it's ludicrous. It's lunacy. It's lunacy. But then a 420.69%, that just means if this was actually real, and I don't know if it's real, that just means that that's the little thought that they have in the way of a person's livelihood. You're already shutting down economies over literally 100% tariff. And if it's supposed to be an entertainment value of people going down into economic and financial despair, joking and laughing all the way, then the comedy appeal ship has sailed, or excuse me, has stopped being imported along with all of the other ships. Because what this actually did, it ground the economy to a halt. You now have ships that are time in transit, i.e., that means ships that are gone on out with orders. They're now sailing to a location in a destination and they're dropping anchor and they're trying to call and they're trying to find out, how do we unload this? What gets unloaded? Will anything get unloaded? Boy, oh boy, the merchants of the earth are sitting afar off. Because why? Because this is the first step in an economic implosion that is happening here right now in real time. It doesn't mean that we can't survive it. Matter of fact, I believe we're not just going to survive it, but we're going to thrive past it. How? Why? What? How did you get through this? How did you get through this setup? How did you work through this setup? We had insulated ourselves. Nobody would have been able to buy, sell, or trade. How did you Negroes get past this calculus? Because understand, the United States will still be having a at least shell of economic activity. It's not going to be at the greatest or highest of heights, but you'll have some economic activity. It just means that the economic activity will be more depressed, more suppressed. It will now mean that there's more laws in terms of people who are able to participate economically because this participation is going to cost. This is economics 101 because this is economic warfare. Economic warfare precedes, that means comes before militaristic warfare. You've had diplomatic warfare, you had information warfare. You're going to have economic and then militaristic because why? The militaristic part comes because people, stuff will get seized, resources will get seized. Oh, when resources get seized, how did they get seized? Through military activity. This is the road. This is the pathway that we're on. This is the road to war. It just took a while for people to understand the roadmap because now you're at the final piece of the roadmap. What does the nation have to do to get their people riled up for war? Well, you're already seeing it with the Carmelo Anthony, the young man that clearly the bond was set too high, and clearly he was released because clearly there was some evidence and I won't use the big word of exculpatory, but there was some very, very highlighting and illustrative evidence to plead his cause for a pretrial release. The judge will not risk that he's just a serial killing maniac that happens to jump in and save little white children when they drown, but goes crazy trying to defend himself from a bully. Do you all like get the literal setup that the Most High is doing right now with these countries? Don't think that these countries do not see these news stories. Don't think that they do not understand what we're saying. Now that the spiritual wool is coming off their eyes, because why? Because our voice has to be the ones to impact. Don't you agree? Don't you agree? Come into agreement, come into contract. Now we're starting to understand how our voice and how our agreement carries a spiritual contract that does what? That creates our demise. But it would be easier said that they would come through and, don't you agree? Don't you agree? No, actually, I don't agree. I'm sorry. I do not agree. You don't agree? Well, then go to Africa. What? Wait a second. Did it really have to go to that type of extreme? And you open up the door for me to go to Africa, that's fine. But are you going to pay back the generation's worth of unpaid debt that's owed? And sorry, you have that case precedence for people in the Eastern Mediterranean nation that's really not even a people. For the peoples of Eastern Europe that still maintain, excuse me, funding from the West to even include the United States. I'm sorry. You set that door, you got that door opened. You're the ones that set the president or the precedent. So you just can't come on out there and throw around all of these things and not say that they're not of consequence, because you have clearly opened the door and now you have a generation of black folks that are clearly saying, okay, that's fine. Give us our reparations and we're out. You want to segregate us? That's fine. We'll be able to get everything taken care of. We know how to buy direct. We'll play the shell game and we'll get our materials. We'll understand. Because why? Because we've been here for generations now. We've learned how to maneuver in these decades. Not a lot of us were just spending time looking at music videos and looking at gyrations and seeing stupid things on TikTok and Instagram. But a lot of us were actually preparing for this moment, so we knew how to move in this moment when a lot of our people would finally get that moment of clarity. When the world will finally see that African Americans, black folks, the diaspora, the African diaspora finally came out of a state of mental incompetence. That's why these nations look at us in derision. No, they look at us in shock and horror because why? Because why? What we did and what we would do to have self inflicted wounds literally made no sense. Isn't that funny that now when people say, I'm just not going to do it, and then they realize, well, why was I, you know what I'm saying? Why was I doing that to begin with? Yeah, I'm not going to do it anymore. But man, wait a second. Wait a second. Why was I even doing that to begin with? That made no sense. What was the purpose for me even doing it? Wait a second. They would benefit and I wouldn't? Their families were fine and my family was struggling? Makes no sense in the world. And now, if you notice, they have become the senseless. For the last 5 years, when those curses have reversed, and they literally became the unsenseless, the unsensible, the insensible, the can't get it right. And now, this whole time, all we're doing is seeing them just getting it all wrong from how they interact with each other and how they interact with the rest of the world. It's just been a master class of how to get things wrong. Garth and I were talking about this yesterday, last night. And then the Q2UA Awards Committee, we were talking about this and we were getting the conceptual framework because we're starting to come together and pull together the resources that we need to have to make something work. And it all begins with the voice. This is why I said, thank you, Father. I know that my voice was getting attacked because we were beginning to move differently. And we have to move differently. We have to move in a way of boldness that the Most High has declared for us in this season. You realize that in this season, right? Literally, the Most High said that we would be, lions in this. We'd be crouching in the thicket. We would be waiting and understanding our moment. I had two kids yesterday, two Hebrew boys yesterday, sitting down. They get kicked out of class. I've become the default substitute teacher slash counselor slash advocate slash you name it. For kids I don't even have on the roster. You know what? I sit down with those kids. You know what my time was? I was sending out some emails and I wanted to work on my dissertation. I wanted to work on that. But I saw the two Hebrew boys struggling. And it was the Gentiles, a Caucasian man. He said, hey, Mr. Copeland, I know that you're on your planning period. Can you help them on out? They're just not being cooperative and they're being disruptive. And I understood the sincerity because I'm going to tell you, as I had been around that Caucasian gentleman, I have had to have discussions with him so he could start to understand the perspectives because it wasn't just the social engineering of the children, it was also a social engineering of the adults. Because why? Because If you're looking at a child as just a statistic, then guess what? You are saying to that child, I don't believe in you. And you're negatively in reinforcing that. Oh, and don't worry, family. I get the same thing ripped out and pulled apart in me because we all have those tendencies. Because at 13, 14 years old, that is literally your time of arrested development. That's what and how we revert. Give me a second. Brother Azab, can you hear me? Uh-oh. Brother Asaph, can you hear me? Can you hear me now, Brother Asaph? You're on mute. Yeah, all right, yeah, try to come back on in. Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go.
Shalom.
There we go. Shalom. I'm
Yeah,
out of that Tampa. I'm out of that
I had
Tampa traffic, so go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I had technical problems. But bro, uh, I know we are passing through some things, but the Gentiles are passing through worse. You know,
Yes.
yeah, is able. Now, all these deliveries that are supposed to go to the United States and they're not taking them in, it's not because of tariffs per se. It's because they're skint, they're broke. You know,
Yes.
it's not like an Amazon delivery that you reject it and then you get a refund. You know, they
Yep.
haven't got the money to pay for this. And also, my brother, Japan has dumped trillions and the Chinese
Yep.
has dumped trillions. So the situation has even become worse.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where, you know, and I'm trying to, it's hard to impress that upon our people. Hey, look, we're literally in a bartering system. And the bartering system is literally with our relationship on the African continent. Understand, we garner a level of technical, strategic, and operational expertise that is unmatched and unparalleled around the world. You know, for a lot of our people, when we know that, you know what we do? We leave. We go to other places. We go to other countries. You see that. You see these on other YouTube channels. I was an African American. I was living there and there. And then I went to this country, and you know what? I got paid like I should have been paid in America. I'm not saying that as a superficial anecdote. I'm not saying that just because. I'm saying that because the data supports it and it proves it. We have our people. When our people are trying to make money, they know. That was always my plan. I knew I was not going to ever make money here in the United States. My whole plan was international business, even at the time that I was literally 18 years old. I didn't know white supremacy like that, but I did know of my condition of being a black person in the United States. And yes, it is a condition.
You
Bec-
know, I lost network connection to you, and I have to switch from my high level Wi-Fi service in my house now to my mobile phone.
Hey, I don't know if that's you
It
or
is
me.
disgusting
I'm kind of in some
what
country
they're doing
parts. Yeah, I'm in the
to
country.
us. I don't get your
Can you hear
notifications
me?
anymore. I definitely, I definitely lost Wi-Fi signal because it came up on my. Yeah, I can hear you
Give me one if you can hear.
clearly.
Hey, give me a one if you can hear us, family, in the chat, because I'm trying to figure this
Oh,
on
you're
out
gone
because
now.
there's
But as I was saying, folks, we're not in a good situation.
no, we're not, and man, but
I was going to fill
understand,
in for
even
you until you came back. And folks, the
yeah,
situation.
go ahead.
Uh, you keep cutting out.
I know. I'm in an area of the country, so there. Let's
I,
say of the state.
I've, I'll fill in for you for a little bit. As yeah,
I'm trying to figure out who's cutting out in Georgia. Out. I'm looking at my
so,
bars. I got a couple of different bars. I got a couple of different bars. I think I'm okay on my end. I think that those C
okay.
cables are probably getting cut right now. They're probably cutting them C cables right now. But
I, I hope not. No, not just yet. But brother, it's not looking good at all. And these incidents in the Yemen and Iran and in Europe, but a hook has been put in their jaw because our time is up now.
you know what though? The thing is, it's like this. They know that in Yemen, they're not sending over any type of Arab troops. They're not. Remember back in 2023, 2022, 2023, China brokered the Yemen um, peace deal between Saudi Arabia, UAE, which were the main troops that was on over there.
Yeah,
It's
Russia was
China that,
involved as well.
yeah, but they're the guarantors of that. So my thing is that if they're saying that, if the U.S. is saying that, I'm just going to let you all know right now, the U.S. is lying. It is not going to be Saudi Arabia and UAE. If anything, there'll probably the Emiratis and the Saudis, in my opinion, may allow quote unquote U.S. mercenary forces under the guise of um, a false flag of troops, but it would be probably Western troops that would then be fighting under false flag. And false flag means that they would have the uniforms, they would have the flags of the nations. They would actually try to say that they represent the nation, but it is totally a U.S. and Western operation.
Yeah, we say sheep dip in over here. Sheep dipped
Yeah,
soldiers.
exactly, and that's exactly what that would be. So don't don't get it twisted. That's exactly how they would operate because China would go back into them and say, "Hey, you violated the terms of our conditions." But then they'll say, "Well, technically speaking, we haven't violated the terms because they're technically not Saudi and Emirati soldiers. We're just allowing them to launch and we're allowing them to have our bases and our flag." So they just paid us for the trademark. They paid us for the copyright, but that's not us. But Again, that would be told to the rest of the world, but here in the United States, they wouldn't tell us that. Why would you? Why would the people here in the United States and even in Europe be told that?
Exactly, because all what we know so far is coming from social media and us being in contact with each other. But very soon they're going to close those channels of communication down, because if we are still passing information between one another and also posting on social media, the Europeans, both in America and Europe, are starting to listen to us, and our voices now has a power that it's never had before. If you notice, a lot of them on TikTok and YouTube are saying that we regret not listening to Hebrews what we were saying.
Hmm. Absolutely. And on top of that, actually what ends up happening is, so we call it, purse tempo, purse stat, things of that nature. Those are oversight data points that a lot of these nonprofit, war monitoring groups, that's what they'll use, because a lot of these nonprofit war monitoring groups will say, hey, we provide the oversight mechanism, to ensure that the American people, understand what's happening around the world. Because they know that a lot of our people won't necessarily, um, be adept for the most part in terms of knowing what's happening. Because to know what's happening, number one, you need to have that be translated to folks. It has to be communicated to folks. Well, what does that mean? What does purge tempo means? It means your personnel tempo and your operational environment. It means where they're going to be located, the amount of days they're going to be located, and even the nature of the mission and how that mission has been classified. And a lot of times, those mission classifications are given all sorts of like crazy classifications to do what? To throw off these oversight groups until somebody, as a whistleblower, comes through and says, hey, yeah, this mission actually means this, and they're actually doing that, and this is what's happening, and then this is what's going on. And then there will be folks in the military forums that have their spouses or brothers or sisters or um, or mothers and fathers asking, I don't get a straight answer. Can somebody help me find this on out? And then it gets leaked. Hey, this is actually what's happening. And then understand the soldiers are being told over there, you cannot let people know what's happening, because that is what? That's called national security, and it's called Operation Security, OPSEC. So then you can be able, so you're not jeopardizing the lives of people. You know, and that's a very, very anecdotal matter. Oh man, if I'm jeopardizing my buddy's security and things of that nature and yada yada yada, right? However, when they say grave danger or grave things of that nature, they're not understanding that the grave embarrassment that that would cause is because in every position that they're doing, if you have congressional oversight and three-letter oversight and presidential oversight, oh no, nothing's going on, nothing's going on, nothing's going on. And then people are speaking out and saying, actually, that's a lie. This is going on, that's going on, and all this stuff. Well, what does that look like? That's an embarrassment. And now you have in this time frame that really, the more that they get embarrassed, the worse it is for them, because it's just proving the point to the rest of the world that, man, this thing has, you all have always been bamboozled, but we were just going to sit here and just watch you get bamboozled, because honestly, we don't have any type of dog in the fight.
It appears to me, as someone who studied organizational behavior and the functioning of organizations, that you guys have, and us as well, have gotten rid of experienced analysts, and that's the reason why policy is not matching up with what's happening. What's your view on that?
Well, I look at it like this: policy cannot match up with reality, because policy has to has to be tailored in a way to reduce the amount of national embarrassment. And I'm sorry, the way that this tariff thing was rolled out, it was rolled out very,
Brother Karras, you're gonna have to repeat that
in
because
a
you cut
manner.
out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was handled in a convoluted manner. Can you hear me? It was in a convoluted
Yeah, I
manner.
can hear you.
And that convolution was something that you now have to be able to put a band-aid. And if that band-aid is not accepted, at least in the international arena, then you have to come back into the domestic markets. Okay, let's get some stories that we can push on the algorithm. Let's push this story of, this domestic thing happening here in Texas. Because when it's all said and done, when you're able to create the position of, well, all of this is black people's fault because look at what's happening and look at what they did to this child over here. It doesn't even matter what type of facts. Look, we always knew that they never dealt in facts, so that's not even a problem. But it's easier. They knew that that is their, literally their long-standing army, their long-standing army that they know how to manipulate. They know how to mobilize, and they know the reaction that they're trying to get out of black people. So then we could be the ones to be the quote unquote national embarrassment. Oh, we got to fix the issues for black people because I don't know why they just snapped. I don't know why they just, went along and just snapped. And now it's 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 a baffling situation for them. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm in a dead zone.
Yeah, yeah, I
Can
can
you
hear
all
you.
hear me? So they're in a baffling situation to where they truly can't understand why is it that we haven't quote unquote taken the bait. Wait, I thought that we were able to have them take the bait because they just love to be roused up and we rile them up like this. Now
Yeah, I
you
did an
understand.
in-
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I did an
Go ahead.
interview sometime in the Caribbean, on one of the major news channels, and I said that Donald Trump was the best thing ever to happen to the African American community, the Caribbean community, and our brothers world and sisters worldwide, because he's got all of us on code now, and we're all thinking the same way. And this is a major problem now because we're not looking
Yes.
towards the United States and Europe as being our saviors no more. We're looking towards ourselves, and we're looking towards protecting our communities and our economies. And most importantly, many of the younger people now are looking towards going back to Africa. Like my daughter said to me, Dad, I feel that I would be better off with my master's degree in pharmacy if I was working in somewhere like Africa because
Come on
I'd be
now.
treated better.
What? Wait a second. What? Your daughter does what? Pharmacy? Pharmacists like
Yeah,
that. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is what we have as our people and the level of expertise that our people have. You realize this. I'm going to tell you this. You want to know what you just hit me with, Brother Asaph? That's
yes,
near and dear to me because you understand that Americans here, especially African Americans, we are heavily dependent on pharmaceuticals. And do you know that right now, when China stopped the boats, guess what? That's the pharmaceuticals.
exactly. Because I went to pick up some prescriptions yesterday, and I was listening to the farmers saying that there's loads of stuff out of stock, and they come through the United States, and immediately my mind ran on China. You know, a lot of the stuff is being manufactured in China and in India, and if there are tariffs, we're all going to be affected.
Yes, I had said this a while ago. The U.S. was always the backstop of the UK's of the UK's logistics and supply chain. This is why you weren't getting tore up by all of the fees from Europe when you all did Brexit.
Exactly, because at the moment now we've got a shortage of various kinds of insulin, and
Hmm.
and that is going to become a problem in the coming weeks for diabetics like myself. But Yah gave me the insight to stock up for months.
Yes.
So I can last probably about 4 or 5 months without going to the pharmacist, and that is fantastic. And most importantly, I believe that before we exit this place, Yah must heal me for me to return to the wilderness, or there will be
Ab- or
some
there'll be
bushes that I
something
can drink
there.
out there to control
Yes,
my symptoms.
exactly. And I
Someone will
believe,
know.
go ahead.
Someone will know what teas I need to drink to stay healthy.
Exactly. And understand, family, that is literally, I look at it like this when people say, oh, that doctrine of flee, oh, we'll never go back to Africa. All of that nonsense that we heard years ago. I'm like, those are from people that are short-sighted. And they're short-sighted because people want to live in blissful ignorance. Everybody wants to live in blissful ignorance. Until now, this blissful ignorance, you understand the balloon popped on the
Yeah,
dream. The fairy
yeah.
tale popped.
Now, as you well know, my wife comes from West Africa, and she's never heard about no flea doctrine, but she wants to leave now.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know, we got hit with a financial setback, but if things had worked out, would have been probably out of here in a few months' time. You know,
Yeah.
and that would have been it, because I'd be prefer to be sitting in my house in Accra and be watching on my widescreen TV what's happening in Europe and America while I'm over there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because what's happening is has nothing to do with us. You know, we're not going to fight for a system that's going down or bail out a sinking ship. In every situation that Europe and America has been in, whether from medieval times, including the Second World War, they turned to Africa to rebuild Europe and the United States, and we ain't having that no more.
Hmm.
Even our people that aren't well read understand that something is wrong and they need to get out of the way. It's now I'm seeing the most people who are saying, "Oh, we want to go back to the Caribbean, or we want to go to Africa, or we want to go elsewhere." I've never seen it like this.
Exactly. Yeah, in less than a month, it's literally like in less than a month, not even 20 days. It was T plus 20, not even T plus 20, and folks were literally like, "All right, it's time to go. This thing is never coming back." I never heard that much talk, and it's not just in our community. This is even what you hear from white people. Man, we need to go.
Yeah, I've got colleagues at work that say, "Look, bro, I'm taking early retirement and I'm moving to South America or somewhere else." Some are saying that, "Oh, we want to move to Africa." We have in my assembly we have one or two couples that are like mixed, black and white, in my assembly and other assemblies that I'm associated with, and they say, "Well, we're building a house in Tanzania or South Africa or Ghana, and we're leaving." I've
Hmm.
never seen anything like that before. And some of them who are living there say that they didn't realize that Africa could be this. This is Europeans. They're not coming back to Europe. They're
Yep.
done.
Yeah, there just has to be a very big, vital infrastructure build out and component, and I think that that will happen once you have the, I would say, the cronyism, um, and that cronyism being the and I'm trying to think of the word, the amount of, um so help me out with the word with with that word, illicit activities, things of that nature that happens, that we have to deal with, the under the table, bribery, theft, and other things that we have
It's
to deal with.
yeah,
Those.
and what's alarming is that these people aren't people that are unskilled. We've got people from their neck of the woods that are doctors, lawyers,
Hmm.
engineers, people with skills and with education, that can build nations, including our people. So I don't
Hmm.
see no way back for Europe and America right now. I think they're declining, and if their leaders had sense, they'd sit down with us and negotiate a
A
settlement.
settlement.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but
That is true.
but we know from prophecy that's not going to happen. They're going to fight until the end.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Negotiate the settlement, but now but exactly. And, you know, every single day, the value of this dollar, it gets sapped. The value of is getting sapped. And I want our people to really appreciate that, because when they say inflation, that inflation is because the value of the dollar is not as valuable anymore. It's going to cost more. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get everybody economically imperiled.
But it's not only the economy that it's the perception as well. Because look at designer brands and all that kind of stuff. How China put them under the bus. China manufactures stuff for pennies on the dollar, and America and Europe has been selling them at markup prices, and it's really 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 bad what's been happening. and our people and their people have been blinging out with this designer gear to show that they have class. And now you can get it for pennies because the factories have opened up. You know,
Yep.
and you can get the same designer watch that costs thousands of dollars now for a few $100s with the same
Yep. From the same
movements
factory.
from the same factory, and and
That's
and that's
crazy.
that demarcation of power through and perception through owning these things don't matter anymore. The real thing, the real wealth now
Hmm.
is gold, and once gold reaches $3,500 per
How
ounce.
much? Can you repeat that again? Can you repeat that again? How much gold
It,
reaches?
I said once gold is at 3,300 now, but
That's crazy.
once it reaches 3,500, the all European currencies won't be worth the money that they're printed on,
Hmm. Yeah,
and all
there. It is.
yeah, and all the
There's
continents that
even a
have gold.
suppressed gold price.
Yeah, oh yeah. Because what they're doing is that they're using COMEX trading to keep the cap on the gold price, whilst the volumes of the real thing is being bought up by hedge funds and by banks to offset the the debts that they're going to have. You can explain it better because your genius in
Mm,
economics is probably a little bit better than mine. I studied organizational economics, but
mm.
they're in
Well,
yeah
it
they're
has
in,
to be
yeah. Go ahead.
it has to be organizational. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You
I
know,
know I'm breaking
I
up. Go
I,
ahead.
I looking at it from the outside, we don't own the assets to which our heavenly Father uh, willed to us from the foundation of the world, and these people own what we have, and I believe that once these gold prices start shooting up more, they're going to think of probably recolonizing Africa again. Yeah, which the Most High won't
Well,
allow
they're
it.
gonna fight. Yeah, they're gonna fight. Remember, um, Trump was already saying that in his first term, and that was already stated back in like 2021, 2022, that they have to go after Africa. That's
Do
gonna
you
start
remember?
coming. The
Do you
problem
remember when they
is
were
that they have
rehearsing
to.
an invasion for Africa? Sorry to cut you. Do you remember when they were rehearsing an invasion of West Africa?
Hmm.
So these people plan for the
Yes,
long term.
yes, I remember that. I remember that. Yes, they plan literally about a decade or two out. Now they can't plan a decade or two because they now see that if you don't have the source materials to do what? To even be able to carry out those type of operations. The good old days of operational readiness and operational sustainability to be able to do, all of these crazy plannings and things of that nature is no longer there anymore. So that timing in that time frame is just, you know, that was now the dream, the bucket list, because that
Yeah,
dream isn't there anymore.
yeah. And what's put a spanner in the works is that they're tied down in the Middle East, they're tied down in Europe, and other places that they don't want to mention on the news. And they don't
Yep.
have the manpower, the resources, or the manufacturing to produce the weaponry that they need to carry out such plans. So that plan is tanked basically. So I want to see what they're gonna do. The best option for them, and I'll repeat it again, is if they repent and sit down and talk to us because we're the only people that can help them out of it. But the thing is that their judgment has been set, and then they're going to have to accept what happens and what to them later on, because it's just going to be the what falls off the table that they're going to inherit.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. Because why? Because now Europe is realizing that they're in a world of hurt. Europe has always relied on Africa. They just didn't want to say that they've always relied on Africa. Because why? Because that hurts their pride. That hurts their vanity. And if you're a country that knows that, look, you can't survive off of a country, or excuse me, off of a continent that you all have denigrated, and now you're realizing that the continent that has been denigrated is now realizing that they have always been the source of power and wealth and strength of the Western world, then guess what? They're taking their power back. This is what Africa is trying to do. This is why they have an arrest warrant. They're supposedly having an arrest warrant for Traore because Traore is speaking the truth.
I didn't know that they had an
They're being
arrest warrant for
cowards.
Tory.
Supposedly, they may not. They may not. They may be talking about it. Trying to scare folks. They always try to scare folks. You know what? But here's the issue. Here's the issue. I would say this. You need to arrest that person in the Eastern Mediterranean nation before you even talk about Traore. I would say you do
But,
that first.
however, we've seen the hypocrisy of the legal system on an international stage
It's
anyway.
it's all it's all about. And so what does that do? What did that do? It undermined it. Literally, they literally undermined their whole legal construct and apparatus. They showed the world that the legal system was fake. It was faker than a $3 Gucci purse. It's fake,
Yeah, yeah. But unfortunately now you
and it
can
doesn't
get
even
a
have the
real
same
Gucci
quality.
press.
That that
Uh,
that that quality wasn't
you
even
can,
produced in China.
yeah. Unfortunately for them,
That was
you
that
know,
wasn't even Chinese made, Chinese constructed. that was American made, constructed, coming out of those American factories, and those little 3D video renderings, which in my mind was actually pretty hilarious. That
yeah.
was pretty
I don't know.
hilarious.
I don't. Personally, I don't worry about uh, the situation with them at the moment. What I'm concerned about is my people being saved worldwide and getting out of this system,
Hmm.
because there's nothing for us to hang around. There's no brighter tomorrow or no bluer skies for these people here,
So
and
let's
I
so
hope.
let's understand. Let's understand the real thing that's going on here. If what they're saying, let's just understand the reality of this. If you have a black person, let's just call it what it, let's just understand. You have a black person that creates a product, and now that product can be easily manufactured in China without a middleman, with great manufacturing and great design, artwork, flair, things of that nature, then what happens to all of these fashion houses and all these fashion pieces? What happens to all the folks that are there working under a Louis Vuitton, working under a Gucci, or working under an LVMH brand model system? That's the Louis Vuitton Moet um, holdings. Those are the luxury brand holdings. If you have
Uh,
black folks that say, you know what, I'm done with this, I can actually make more money on my own, and If I'm the one, if I'm the top contributor, if I'm the top designer, you've seen them promoted just recently, and they'll let you know that they actually have been getting promotions. This is very funny because this is actually something that's very concerning. They don't like to tell you how white supremacy works. They don't like to tell you how their vanity works. But I believe that folks have been threatened. You want to know what? If I'm here and I'm getting all these designs going and I'm the one that's now their bread and butter, man, I need to be promoted and y'all need to have a release on that because why? Because that's just making my image and my stock even better.
Yeah, because I was seeing on social media that a lot of the stuff that they are promoting, what is designed in Nigeria, like the bags, like the
Yes.
shoes, and and the belts and so on for a lot of these fashion houses. And if we can get the manufacturing done in China and the designers set up their own brands, it's the end of these European luxury brands.
It's
And
the end of the European luxury brands, and China and that's why I want our people to understand what China just did. They just went in. They went in on the image of America. If you destroy the image of a people, then guess what? You destroy the reputation of a people. Do unto her as she has done unto others. That's Obadiah, and that's also Jeremiah chapter 50. We're seeing that.
yeah,
So, yeah, go
it's
ahead. Go
just
ahead.
like me in my older days. I could walk onto one of these housing projects without any body armor on when I was 15 years or so younger. But it's my reputation that's carrying me that I can defend myself, and not only that, I know how to talk to people. Why get away with it? But they don't know that I've had so many operations, and I'm not the force. I can't do the martial arts moves that I used to do before. But it's the same like America, isn't it? But if I
Yep.
lose that aura of invincibility, man, I'm in trouble. And that's exactly
Yep.
what's happened to the United States. And they are gonna
That
get
is what's
slapped.
happening. They
It's gonna
lost
get
their
slapped.
image. They lost control of their image. They cannot control their image anymore. Again,
And they
if
did
you
it to
are
themselves.
and they did it to themselves. If you're a
They
country
did
that
it
can,
to themselves. They
that is
did it to
step
themselves.
one. That's step one in introducing slavery. I want people to truly understand where this is actually going. It is actually going towards their literal enslavement. Now, their enslavement, it may not be chattel at first, but it is going to devolve into that chattel apparatus slowly but surely. Because why chattel? Why chattel? Because there's going to be generations and a generation. Let's just face it, there's going to be about 100 years of deference. There's going to be about 100 years of folks telling the stories of we're going to be able to get back what's ours. We're going to be able to come back from this. We may have had a hiccup. You know, our generations before us may have been weak. They're going to look at this generation and they're going to say, this was the weak generation, and we're going to come back and we're going to be stronger. It's going to take probably about 100 years, and then they're going to realize now we're in a weakened state. All we can do is just be able to survive. And then from there, that's how they're going to start wiping out things. Think about this Red Note, they gave them an introduction to Chinese history and culture. The
Yeah,
Chinese
and
people, they
that
literally
that
said
that was
5,000
that
years.
was
Go ahead.
That was psychologically wicked what the Chinese did to them. You can get a top of the range electric car for $5,000, better than Tesla,
Better than Tesla.
better than
Tes-
Tesla,
Tesla
and they've
vehicles
got
are
a
now
larger
130. Go ahead.
yeah
Go ahead.
they've got a larger middle class than the United States and Europe. And when you look at their houses, everything is futuristic. It just destroyed the image of Europe and America in just one go. Them tariffs. I think
In less than a month, the image of the West has been destroyed. In
completely
less than a
wiped
month.
out. Completely wiped out. I don't know how they're going to recover from this, if ever. It's just a downward trajectory from now on, I see.
Yeah, because now understand, now you have these African leaders that are like, hey, this is why we were working with Russia and China. Now you're starting to understand it. Now you get it. See, they weren't allowed to say all this because why? Because it was affecting their bottom line. It was affecting the quote unquote dollar. But these folks don't care about dollars anymore. They're all going to RMB. RMB is what? Gold backed. China has the most. Now China's building up their gold holdings. And guess what? They're going to also say, you want to know what? You now owe us our gold holdings and then some in this international trade dispute because you all were the ones that took it too far. And guess what China did last week? They went and they did a dispute within the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Now you're going to start to see there are legal, economic, diplomatic moves that's going on. Nobody wants to make a militaristic move unless the prosecution of different legalistic mechanisms that the West even produced, they're following it. All right. Are you going to follow it or are you going to discredit it? And if you discredit it, therefore we'll have to destroy it. And then and that destruction destroy you so then we can put in a global order that's actually a global order of multilateralism. I love it when people say the new world order. No, we've been under the new world order of the one world government for quite a while. It was just the one world government, the one world system was known as the UN, courtesy of the US. That's all that was. And now
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
Yeah, go
exactly.
ahead.
I was saying exactly, and now the US has found itself in the quandary, and they don't know what to do, and the population know that they've made a drastic mistake. But I believe that it didn't matter who they elected, the system would have imploded one way or the other because
Yeah, I think. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
we did warn them that they should let us go and talk about giving us pay for our wages that they haven't paid us. And now our prime minister stood up in parliament along with the leader of the opposition, who is Yoruba, Kemi Badenoch, and said nothing like that is never going to happen. We will see whether it's going to happen or not, because they're going to have to do it by force, whether they believe it or not. And the thing is that our church leaders, whether here or America or in the European continent, do not want to do it because that involves telling the people the reason why they have to pay us is because we're the children of Yasharel, and they're not going to do that.
Hmm.
They prefer to die first.
Well, and that's their wish, right? They would rather, as the kids would call it, they'd rather crash out, and they're going to crash out very hard. Now we have to come through as a people to avoid their crash out. We have to come through to avoid their crash out. and that crash out is going to be very serious. Do you think that, look, do you think that after all this time that they've been in charge, do you really think that they want to cede power? It's going to start looking like the Japanese with kamikazes. Why would they strap themselves up like a terrorist? The funny thing is that, right, you know, don't judge or you're going to be the one to be judged, right? Don't That thought process is this. You're looking at their actions. Remember all the things with the suicide bombers and the terrorists and things of that nature? That would never be us. That's horrible. That would never be us.
We are a forgiving and we are a loving people, and we can forgive anything. This is why the Most High has to do the judgment himself. Because if they were willing to meet us halfway, we'd be willing to let them off the hook and walk away from the situation as it is. But the Most High is not going to allow that to happen. He's gonna put on what we went through back onto them, and to see such a horrific decline of America and Europe, as I see it now, looking back at programs from the 80s and 70s when I was a little kid and growing up, in the 90s. It's absolutely shocking to see how speedily this decline has come. Within 1 month, the whole American economy and European economies has been wiped out, because it affects us as well. Because we have brands like Burberry, which is made in China as well. That's gone out the window. I don't know what uh, we are going to do. At present, the pound is climbing against the dollar, moving up quite rapidly on the forex market. But having said that, European currencies will be affected once gold reaches 3,500. Nobody's not going to be interested in buying nobody's bonds anymore. I don't know what your views are on that, but
Isn't that crazy? I believe that like that could happen in the matter of days. That gold could be at 3,500 USD in a matter of days. I mean, last week gold was just at what, 3,200?
it reached 3,300 at one point. But I think what happened to bring the price down is that those people who had short positions, using Fibonacci levels and all that kind of stuff to guess
Mm-hmm.
where to short the market, uh, they had to close their short positions where they put shorts in to cover themselves, which is why gold slightly retraced. But I think that probably by Friday next week, you probably might be looking at a 3.5, or later this month, a 3.5,
Yeah.
3,500 level gold price, and then
Well,
the
that's
price of
what
bonds is
Brother
going
A
to
said.
tank.
Remember, Brother A said, that's why I said by next week. Remember, you said later this month. What's next week later? Today is
Yeah,
only the 18th. That's the 25th.
yeah, that's right.
And
It's
so
it's
that's why I said yes, because you got to remember the first reportings of this month will be due by what? May 1st. May 1st will give you a reporting of April. What people are going to try to do, they're going to try to get their positions first in gold, because so everything that people do is a forecast. It's a forecast. If they see that things are going to start to look bad, oh, we're starting to get our numbers, we're starting to bring our numbers in, it's looking bad, then what do? You take the position first, you take the higher position first, because why? Because then the position will begin to climb. So the more that you buy it at less, guess what? The more you can sell it. You have a better position.
Yeah, because over the week the consumers don't have access to the market over the weekend
Exactly.
when it's closed, but the hedge funds and those people can put on
They
long
do.
positions over the weekend.
They talk over the weekend. They're not supposed to talk, but they talk. They're not supposed to collude, but they do.
They do. An
They do.
example of that is some of your politicians over in America there that knew about the when the tariffs how the tariffs are going to work, and they spoke amongst themselves and made money
Hmm.
about it, and there's not a proper investigation going on about it. But I'm not going to say
Because there
anything more
will,
about
because there'll never be an investigation. So what does that mean? That means now that people can't trust stocks. Because why? Because people aren't going to be able to trust the system. The system has now made itself untrustworthy, right? That's vanity. And the concept of white supremacy and vanity, pride, things of that nature. Hey, I can't trust that these markets are going to work. So therefore, I am not going to spend money in the markets. That's why Japan, that's why China, and even Korea started dumping last week and earlier this week. The gig is
it.
up. Yeah. Why get lied to, and why are we the ones that's now coming out of pocket? Nobody wants to be screwed for the sake of another person. What
and
you,
and
you want
and
to you
and
want me
just
to be screwed? Why? Because you're America? You yeah, that's right. That does that even make sense? You see what I'm
yeah,
saying?
and I know they listen to these channels, and probably a few of them have gotten through half a bottle of bourbon listening to us talking, because they know that whatever we say happens within days now. We were talking about these situations years ago, that they're going to be exposed. And now it's happened. They're finding it difficult to cope with. I would like to see what the job figures are in May for the United States and Europe once
Well,
once this goes through. You'll be getting
well,
people
you gotta
taking the
remember
shortcut. It'll be
you gotta
1929 all over again.
it is, but you gotta remember they're gonna hold off. They're going to hold off because they're not going to cut jobs until about, I'm going to say June, July timeframe. That's when they're going to start cutting jobs. Now, April, May, I'm going to tell you, and it's sad because I know exactly how these folks work. They're going to say, we're going to wait and see how the government is doing. We're going to wait and see because the new, financials and things of that nature, we're going to be within the contracted window and vehicles because they're going to say that September 30th, when the new budget comes around, they're going to tell them all that. Don't worry, right? Well, of course. What are you going to say to your people? Are you going to tell your people to panic? Are you going to tell your people, hey, pray because we're in some financial hardships? You're not going to say that. They're certainly not going to say that
Well,
because they've already created. Yeah, go
you,
ahead.
you can't tell a turkey that it's got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming, can you?
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh
You can't
boy.
tell a
Oh,
pig that,
we should stop
that
making fun of them. It's painful.
Yeah, you
People,
can't tell a pig we're getting into Easter season. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah. Or a pig that Easter's coming, and it's going to be ham. No, it's funny. Oh boy. Oh, we're just sitting here eating popcorn and just watching the system crumble. It's nothing to do with us, bro. We want to go home. That's how I look at it.
Hmm. Well, we have been stating this for a while, and as we've been literally just stating this, we I'm not gonna come on out here and tell people, man, I told you so. Look at this, I told you so. I'm not going to put on my Negro Damas hat. I'm not. I'm not going to be in the pride and vanity. I'm not. Because just like everyone else, guess what? I'm in the same boat as every one of us here. We're all in the same boat.
That's definitely true.
But
But
here's the thing: some have more, some have less, and we need to be praying for our people to, hey, if you're in the position, if you're in the position to give, if you're in the position to be able to help out the community, that's how we have to do things. Look, and I'm sorry if there's any celebrities that's on out here that's in the position of helping on out to provide for a container, that's what's needed. Because now, I'm sorry, all these celebrities and everything else now they're all looking like Boo Boo the Fool. They're looking like Boo Boo the Fool. You have all this money and everything else, and now China's literally saying, we're going to take your livelihood. And that's just not, we're going to take your livelihood. We're literally going to take,
you've cut out. Uh, you've cut out, brother
sorry.
Caris.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I got a police officer. Because I'm stuck in this nice, lovely traffic that never fails. When I go to Orlando, it just never fails. That's why I was like, yeah, I'll definitely be able to do a two, almost 3 hour live. I'm going to Orlando. 60 miles will only be about 3, 4 hours.
Oh, you're not going to Disneyland, are you?
I'm literally right here at Disney World with the crash, and I was in traffic for about an hour and a half talking to you all, and that's what happens. It's without fail.
Talking
Take
of Disneyland, Jeffrey Sachs. Who Jeffrey Sachs is.
yes, yes.
He said your president is a articulate as Mickey Mouse.
Well, the reality is
Well,
that,
less
you know,
articulate than Mickey Mouse. Yeah.
the reality is it's pretty bad. It's pretty sad. Give me a second. I'm trying to get through this choke point. And when you go through these little choke points, this thing blocked the whole. They got all 3 lanes. I'm literally having to drive on the grass here on the highway. That's how this thing is. I'm driving. Yeah, I have to drive on the grass. Yeah. Oh,
Be,
somebody almost
be
hit me on the
careful that you don't
grass.
get pulled over.
Yeah, yeah, because somebody almost hit me on the grass because these people drive like just fools.
Wow.
Yeah, it is that bad. It is that bad. Yeah, it's like a 7 car pileup. This is one of the most dangerous stretches of road in the nation. So the amount of deaths on I-4 is actually quite remarkable. So uh, when I come on out here, I try to always come on out, usually like Saturday mornings very early to see my dad and kind of go from there.
How is your dad now?
He's doing better. He's starting to recall some things, so that's a blessing. So, just being able to see him and things of that nature, it always helps. It always helps. You know, the
I know.
circumstances of everything is really hard because he doesn't really understand what's happening, but he's starting to recall memories. So um, so it is what it is. And that's why, look, understanding that we're responsible to take care of the poor and the needy. We're responsible to take care of the elders. You know, we would always be told, look, if you're able bodied, that's what my grandmother would always tell me. If you're able bodied, you got to take care of your elderly. You got to take care of your needy. You got to take care of the poor. You got to take
It,
care
it
of the children.
it's our culture. It's our culture. We never used to put our elderly in old people's homes and stuff like that because they were valued and we were able to look after them, and they were able to look after our children and pass on their knowledge to us. But over time, we became very Europeanized, especially here in the UK. And as soon as our parents get to 70 or 80, we want to kick them out. But it's not a good culture at all. You know,
It's not a
the,
good culture. It is not because we would glean information. Even when, because I remember when my grandmother took in my aunt, she was in her 90s and she was living up into her 90s. She was in Washington, D.C. And I remember that as a child. We went down, we grabbed her aunt. She lived in D.C., but she lived up, she was from a little place called Gifford, South Carolina. And from Gifford, you had a couple of opportunities, couple different choices. You either go to Charleston or you go to Savannah. And for my grandmother, she had first moved over to Charleston, and then from Charleston, you know, they went up north to Philadelphia, Newark, and New York. So a lot of that was a migration of the South that was taking place because understand it's hard. It's hard to talk about things that had happened. I was talking to Sister Darlene, one of our board members here at Q2UA. She was talking about how she had visited an island, Saposa or Suppose. Don't get me the line, but it's a barrier island over in southeast Georgia. But the island had been gifted a large majority of the island that had been owned by a slave owner. He gifted a large portion of his land to the descendants of those that had been enslaved under that that plantation, which that island used to be. It was just a plantation, a huge plantation. And now these folks are facing legal challenges that they're about to get ran off of the island. And see, now the tactics are a little bit more nuanced because now if you do things like that, that they used to do, you know, 80, 90 years ago of, you know, suiciding people with a gunshot to the back of the head to take land and then forcing the children to scatter, to up and leave, because it wasn't just done to your immediate family, it was done to all of your families because all of your families had some sort of a declaration. Think about, I'm going to tell you this. If you had an audit of the land in the South, if you had an audit of about 150 years, you had an audit, there are records that are missing. and there are records that do not make sense. How is this person paying taxes on the land and then all of a sudden this land gets deeded on over? There's no transaction, it's just a fill in. They can miss me
They
with
can
the we
miss
were
me
never
with the
productive, we were never
productive
this.
without.
They could take that garbage somewhere else because they know it's garbage. This is why they're trying to heavily attack and redact American history, because they know that most of history, you steal the land and literally you steal a people from the continent to work the land. And then you steal the land that you done gave the people that you done stole from other people. You know what I'm saying? It's a legacy of theft.
Well, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, it's a legacy of theft. Nah, we done stole it. We gave it to you, and we're gonna take the land back that we done stole anyway.
It's a common story, and even in the Caribbean, that's happened to a family that I know. You know, they own the whole of Westmoreland, which is a very large parish, and the slave master willed it for the kids, and then they went to court to sort it out, and some 90 or so years ago, and the sugar company Tate and Lyle won the case and took the case, and even with the will, a written will, and took the properties over. There was thousands of acres of land
Yep.
worth several hundred million now, US dollars.
Hmm. That's how it goes. That's the legacy. So now think about this. If you know the history and you know the legacy, then then why concern yourself? Why concern yourself? Because they're gonna try to still steal the land, with other legal loopholes and mechanisms. That's now what they're doing. They're now, instead of just shooting somebody in the head, they're now just saying, well, you know what? We'll just have legal mechanisms to take everything. And do you see that? Look, they always try to say, well, China and things of that nature, you can't go into their courts. Like, stop with the hypocrisy. You're getting mad at China, but do you all know you all do the same thing? They're just doing what they learned from you. They wouldn't be doing that if they hadn't learned that from you. Everything they're doing to you is what you have done to us. And because you have not, and I'm talking about America, because they have not been able to rectify this injustice, why are they going to get mad when injustice is now done to them? They act like the
Uh,
Most High doesn't punish alike.
well, according to them, and a wonderful Kojic pastor that I spoke to uh, earlier this week, is that we're under the law of love, and once you love and your sins are forgiven, then you're not going to get judged for what you do, which is absolutely false, because David got judged even though he repented. He got his ass whooped. Sorry to use that language. He lost two sons, and he got exposed publicly, and
Hmm.
they expect Yah to be partial. That's not going to happen.
Yep. And now understand, we are literally living in a time where they're getting mad because realistically, they're seeing their end. They're seeing their end. They don't want to go too far in this type of analysis wheel because why? Because it's scary for them to witness their end. Who wouldn't be scared? And that's the natural reaction. All we had been stating was this was going to be occurring because of what you all had been doing.
Exactly, because it appears like a huge crime scene now. Because what's happening is that in the United States, so you're having books removed, you're having the history being critiqued. People are talking about critical race theory when the history is being taught. But if you look at your history and you look in the mirror and you see Hasatan as a reflection, rather than repenting, trying to cover up your sin ain't going to help you.
Yeah. They dug in. They literally dug in and it got worse. They dug in and they got worse. Look, repentance really does go a long way because people will deal with you if you have a heart to repent. I want to start over. I want to do this. I want to do that. But what's your actions? We already knew that in the time that they would ever even consider reparations was when this thing had collapsed. So don't be surprised that they'll be saying, oh, yeah, we're going to now pay reparations. Black folks have all your money. Yeah, gee, thanks. Now that everything is worthless, we appreciate it. Now that everything is worthless, why are you getting mad now? Look, we paid your money. See, now, you all are now ungrateful. You're ingrates.
I'm just watching the news to see what the next development is going to be, because as soon as we switch on the news, something is happening. For example, today I was surprised to learn that the United States is pulling out of Syria. I wonder why.
And like I had said, I think a lot of places are going to be pulled out. Right? They want to now pull out of Europe. They want to pull out of Europe. They've already made that known. They're gonna pull out of what, the Baltic nations, but you also know where they're gonna pull out. They're gonna pull out of Germany. Why? Because they cannot sustain the empire. If you ain't got no money coming in, you're not gonna be able to sustain the empire. I
Yeah,
would not be surprised that there's gonna be a ton of, they call it BRACs,
yeah,
base realignment and closures. Base realignment and closures. That's what they call it. It's
yeah,
BRACs.
yeah. The United States now is like a malnourished nursing mum. The milk is dried up.
Well, it is, and it's going to be very dramatic seeing like all these things just closing. Wow, that's not here anymore. Wow, that's not there anymore. Interesting.
It won't be surprising if these nations stop keeping the biggest secret in the world after that. After the money starts drying up, by saying that we're the people of the book after this, and that's what I'm expecting in the coming months.
Well, yeah, because after the money's gone, why? Well, there's no reason, right? That's what I've always said. They will, they're holding on to the biggest secret because why? Because they're getting compensated for it. They're getting compensated to lie about us. They're getting compensated, right, to keep the lie. When the lie gets found out, it's because they're not able to pay the hush money. That's all this is doing. USAID was always the gatekeepers for the hush money. Did it ever really make sense to be paying a nation, to be paying other nations so much money around the world? If you're already giving like, you know, billions of dollars to USAID, why couldn't you give billions of dollars to black folks? It really is a simple calculus. Why not?
They realize that if they tell us who we are and pay reparations and then say, well, you got to leave, it will be the end of their empire because their wealth and the wealth of Europe is based on us, basically. Even their AI systems know that.
Yeah, it's the end of the empire, but let's also understand what that actually looks like because um we could say it's the end of the empire. It's a pretty easy anecdote. It's a pretty easy storyline, but let's understand what that really truly means. That would be an infighting like never before. It's an infighting like never before. I'm not the culprit, you're the culprit. I'm not wrong, you're the one that was wrong. That wasn't me, that was you. They will be fighting, and they'll be fighting each other internally. That's why I said, look, yeah, understand what reparations means, because they're not just going to give up their source of pride, their source of value. That is literally what it is. It's their source. And they'll say, I can't do it. We can't do it. We can't move like that. Nuclear option. If I go out, then we all go out. And we'll see if your Elohim is going to save. And you all know that I'm not lying. You all know that I'm not lying. I wish I was lying. But we've been around this this situation for quite a long time.
As I
The
as I
tr-
said as I
Mhm.
said before, you know, it's not looking too good because we are considering the draft in the UK. Did you hear about that?
Mhm.
So
Well, yeah.
they're
So is the UK?
considering.
Do you think the UK is going to try to rejoin Europe in their type of Brexit, European Union um, reconciliation?
I don't. I personally, I don't think so because the British don't like foreigners. They don't, even if they're white. You know, they already feel that the country's overpopulated, And some commentators on some television, extreme right wing television stations, uh, uh, like what we have on satellite TV, are saying that some towns like London are unrecognizable now because the, the, of, of the amount of ethnic minorities living there. I don't think so at all. I
I
don't think
was
so
gonna
at all.
I was gonna ask you that, if that is actually just rumor, conjecture, or if you've even kind of personally seen it to where, you know, um, the places in the UK actually do have a shadow system, and then that shadow system, if they actually do um prescribe to Sharia law, is that something in your opinion, is that actually
Yeah, we have as I put it, Sharia courts operating, but as to their legality, I personally don't think they're legal. Based on in the field that I work, I don't think that they're legal, but they're allowed to operate with impunity, and
oh man.
this is causing consternation. They haven't passed any unaliving judgments yet, but I'm sure that's in the offing. But we've had things like honor killings,
Oh boy.
uh, where a family member, mainly a woman, marries outside the outside the race, so then that can cause problems. That can cause serious problems. But and also we have a problem of uh, so-called illegal immigrants coming in who are of that particular faith, and that is causing a problem. And also, their populations are growing a lot faster than the indigenous population. You know,
Hmm.
they're not concerned about us because they think that we're docile, and because many of our people are Christian, they think that we will side with them and ingratiate with them when the time comes. But I personally believe that many of our people will look towards the continent and where their parents have come from, and just will leave. Because at the moment, it's only the dregs that are thinking, and when I mean the dregs, I don't want to be derogatory. I mean the people who are uneducated, multiple criminal records, psychological problems that are not thinking about getting out of here now. Because I'm shocked
Hmm.
to hear people who are Christian and are not. They're not talking about the rapture no more. They're talking about going back to Africa and going back to the Caribbean or wherever their parents came from, or wherever they emigrated from. And that's the situation on the ground in the UK at the moment. And everybody's dissatisfied with how the government is going. We have a healthcare system that is publicly funded, and that is collapsing as well. People are not getting operations on time, and our hospitals are like African hospitals now, with people sleeping in the corridors. And I don't mean all places in Africa, because in places like Ghana and South Africa and Kenya and Uganda, the health service is not as bad as what it is over here at the moment, my brother.
Hmm.
The whole
Wow.
system is collapsing. As I need to have a muscle graft because of an injury, and I've been waiting since last year December for the operation, and I have to be going
Hmm.
to work with with a bad leg, and I don't know if I'll have that operation anytime this year.
Mm.
And I'm still paying insurance from my wages to the National Health Service for that.
Yeah, that's horrible. That's horrible. Yeah, and boy, We're 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 seeing it on both sides of the Atlantic, both sides of the pond, and that is truly it's truly a frightening situation. I have to
It
say.
it's gone on for so long now that I don't even have to wear my leg brace anymore. You know, if I have to flee, trust me, I'll run.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I'll run. You know, if I could retire now, I'd not bother with the operation because I can walk distances without limping. You know, so I
But
just have to trust in the Most High.
exactly, and we always pray that we have full, complete healing. You know, um, that's what we always pray. Um, in this system, we know that we know the limitations of this system, but it's always the Most High that gives us understanding and knowledge to get through those limitations, because He always ultimately gives us wisdom and guidance in this. Now, again, I always had stated, look, we have what we need to have in this season to where a lot of our people that have been educated in the understanding of infrastructure building and the understanding of economic development, we have all the tools. However, the comfortability of where we're at in the African diaspora, that comfort level is all going away for everyone. And maybe, just maybe, this is an answered prayer, because now folks have to actually understand, all right, I know I can't do it on my own. And as the people, we've always been, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. I look at it and I now have to say we, we, we have to. I'll say it in French. Nous avons, nous faisons.
Exactly. Even my young 15-year-old now is an ace coder. You know, he's got his coding skills is off the chain. He's gotten himself into trouble in school a number of times because of his to prove how brilliant his coding is. I won't comment on that at all. But his coding is at a level of university graduate level when it comes to the C++, the Pythons,
Hmm.
and other languages. You know, his coding is so well that he concentrates more on that than his academic work. I wish there was an education system that was just geared towards developing specific skills, like what we
Hmm.
had in ancient times. If we saw a person had a predilection for being a carpenter, or a predilection for being a mathematician, they'd be put with someone who was skilled in that, and then they'll just develop that. That's how our education system works. And that's how we're going to have it again when we go back to the continent. We're just going to have education systems that work for the kids and that will develop them and their strengths.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why
Boy,
they were
this
able
is
to take us because we had core skills developed from the continent, which were transferable to them, to which they then monetized.
yes. And you know what? And I look at that also here with the with teaching these 13 and 14-year olds and what it is that they plan on doing. A lot of these kids, they don't plan on they it's hard for them to understand and conceptualize what they're going to do, especially as they're getting bombarded with AI. I don't need to worry about becoming a doctor. I have AI. It'll be AI. I don't need to worry about becoming a lawyer. It's AI. You know, I need to worry about computers. But then they look at it as, I don't need to worry about that because I got AI. Look, for them, I just need to worry about my TikTok, my Instagram handle, and that's how they look at it. What is my social media profile saying about me? That's their currency. Honestly, and I can't really say anything um, of the latter because why? Because that is your currency is going to be now your reputation. What is your reputation looking like? Because it's not necessarily in their mind, it's about skills. No, there's still skills. There's still skills in being able to talk to one another, to being able to present ideas to one another, to being able to understand how those ideas will strategically provide a concept that other people can buy into. AI cannot provide any of that. So when I tell them that, they said, Mr. Copeland, well, how's this, Mr. Copeland? How's that? And I tell him, I said, hey, you're gonna have to get Mr. Copeland's class because this is literally the future of where everything is at. It is in a neo-diplomatic fashion. Having these conversations, even talking to brother Asaph right here, this is neo-diplomacy.
Exactly, and that's how we used to. That's how we used to work. Yeah, that's how we used to trade in ancient times. So we used to have neo diplomacy. We used to be able to uh, break barriers, and our people used to be multiple linguists as well, being able to speak loads of
Yes.
different languages.
Bec-
Because we were a people of trade and diplomacy, and
yes.
also we were the intelligentsia of the world, but and we've been now pushed to the bottom, you know,
Because
uh,
go ahead, brother Asaph.
because of being de-skilled. When you look
Hmm.
at read the history books of our ancestors being able to read and write Arabic and read and write Hebrew and
Hmm.
Portuguese and Spanish,
Yes.
you know, and English as well, because we had Hebrews living in England up to 1422 and beyond. And what they did is that they deported them to the Caribbean and to the United States, and wiped the history. and
Yep.
and uh, England wants to act like they weren't involved in the Inquisition as well, but they were deeply involved as well.
Yep. Every single European country was involved in the Inquisition. It was just that other countries would, you know, be the ones to, would contract to bring to enact. You had it with the French, you had it with the Germans, you had it even with the Italians. That's what they were doing. They were just contracting to help, ship them on over, ship them on over. This is why you have a lot of just history and they don't like to understand their history. It's mangled. Even in the European courts, you always had who? Black folks, us, doing what? Advising the king. Understand what we were doing. Hey, the king would say, "Hey, it's out of my hands." The Pope gave his declaration. Hey, king, can you we at least buy some time? Can we give you some money, some gold, so we can buy some time?
And if our people were to get reparations, they would. That's exactly what the vast majority would do.
Yeah, they would
They'd
try to
be-
buy their time. Hey, I want to let me stay here just a little bit longer. Let me just, and then what ended up happening was that they got removed by force, and then they were the ones actually put into slavery
exactly, because what we're seeing
brutally.
happening
Yeah.
now in your country is tantamount to what happened during the Inquisition, with people being removed, and the Second World War. and
Yep.
now it's happening to them as
Hmm.
well, because I saw a story on the news in the UK where a lawyer that was coming back from Canada was stopped, and without a warrant, he was forced to show them what was on his phone, and then at the point of a pew pew, forced to sign a paper to say that he agreed to have his phone searched,
My
which
goodness.
violated attorney-client privilege, as you say over there, and
Hmm.
also
And
freedom of speech and
it actually
innumerable other laws.
yeah, it actually violates a lot of international laws, norms, and customs. So, you know, that's the state of affairs that we're in. That's the
Yeah,
state of affairs that we're in.
years ago, I would have loved to visit the United States, but not nowhere at all. I only want to see that it's where it is on the map. My days of coming over there or visiting there is over, I'm afraid.
Well, you may not be coming over here to visit. You may be coming over here to help with feeding out food here pretty soon. Passing out food programs. The way this thing is going to be working. This
I just pray
we
for
all
our
see where it's
people.
coming. We all see what's coming. It's sad that we can all see what's coming. And I don't know, maybe our people are gripped in some sort of fear or paralysis, which happens. It happens. And I get it. It happens. That's why I said, look, we have to be bold. This container is bold. It's a reciprocity. They've been told for so long by them that we don't like one another, that we can't stand one another. You know what a container does? That shows, man, y'all were able to get $50,000 to get this container up and out of here in times of peril. We're living in times of peril. Don't get that twisted. We don't know if the stock market would
It's
collapse
necessary that
today,
we do it.
tomorrow, and things of that nature.
It's necessary that we do this because I remember in the early 90s when I just got married to my wife, when, in the late 80s, early 90s, and we took a bus to go anywhere, and my wife was sitting beside me, and we were conversing in the local dialect, and then I used to get people from the Caribbean saying, even though a woman walked up to me one time and said, "Why do you have to marry an African woman? You know, couldn't you?" And even in my family as well, why did you have to marry an African woman when there's no difference between us? I mean, my mum asked for some stewed beef to be cooked. You know what that is, and then my wife done it, and my mum said, "Me never know say the girl could cook things like that, man. It tastes like how we would have cooked it, but we're all the same people. We're all the same people, my brother, and the sooner that we can get this thing off the ground is the better for us." I'm going to give way to the person that's just come up.
Yeah.
Peace,
Go
family.
ahead. Go ahead, Pan Mulatto.
Yes, Pam
Interesting.
Mulatto. How
Yeah,
y'all
go
doing,
ahead.
family?
Can you introduce yourself? You don't have to give your name, but if you can kind of break down the historical significance to that, because I want people to understand that. And this is my first time meeting you, so go ahead because I'm just as curious.
Yes, peace, family. This is Pam Mulatto. My page name is Pam Mulatto. Also, it can be searched under the name the Mulatto rights activist, and the historical and the present significance of the term mulatto is acknowledging the genetic reality of people that are mixed race of African descent mainly of European ancestry, but also some Native American ancestry, Asian ancestry, etc. Actually, the host, with all due respect, I'm looking at your phenotype. You appear to be a mulatto. I would not be surprised if you admitted that you have Caucasian ancestry. And the reason I came up today is to acknowledge, yes, we as mulattoes, we are genetically a part of the African diaspora, but we are also a part of the European diaspora. Additionally, we have formed our own diaspora known as the mulatto diaspora. My question is, and this is to the host, it'll be brief as possible. All right, we see that descendants of U.S. chattel slaves are experiencing, pardon me, ethnic displacement in the United States. We see that the communities of descendants of U.S. chattel slaves are being eradicated in the United States. My question is, how can descendants of U.S. chattel slaves unify with Africans and Caribbeans in the United States when these same Africans and Caribbeans support mass immigration, which is literally eradicating descendants of U.S. chattel slaves communities and increasing homelessness and unemployment amongst the descendants of United States chattel slaves?
Yeah, and I've acknowledged that. Look, I did my African ancestry last year. I told people that that thing straight said um Spanish and Portuguese, and I've acknowledged that.
Yes, me too. Me too.
I've acknowledged that. I've acknowledged that even on my ancestry, that well, through my brother, he took me this was the uh, ancestry.com, and that thing straight said Mayflower. I acknowledge that.
Exactly.
So, however, I also do acknowledge that, look, we have African roots. And it's not that we haven't ever had that type of experience. Even as Brother Asaph had said, we have been in and out of Africa as Hebrews, as Israelites. So that is the basis of what we form in the culture. That if you don't know anything about Q2UA, that's the biblical understanding of who we are in this faith-based nonprofit 501c3. However, we also believe in critical infrastructure and economic development. So, what does that mean? That means that those African nations, Caribbean, and even the continent, guess what? In their ignorance, they did things to one another. Now, do you understand this? You just kind of gave a great framing of what happened in the history of what happened to us, of being right exported, to being prisoners of war exported in the culture of African culture. That exportation wasn't an exportation of a lifelong multi-generational sentence. They believed that the prisoner of war would be released under a Jubilee Hebraic system, which is still followed in the customs of African culture today. However, under the European system and model, they didn't realize that it was no, it's a multi generational, never to be released again, never to come back. And now, if you understand what's happening to this system, literally, let's just be honest, for all intents and purposes, to them, they're now going through this system with um, the story of the El Salvadorian that was quote unquote wrongfully deported, and they're quote unquote doubling down on his deportation over to El Salvador. This is what is getting ready to happen because why? Because people are literally a marked currency. And I say marked currency because there's a valuation of literally people.
Well, please let's go step by step because you made a lot of points that I would like to respond to. I'll respond to the last one first. Actually, that El Salvadorian was an illegal alien in the U.S., so he was rightfully deported back to his country of origin, which is El Salvador. But as far as the transatlantic chattel slave trade, we have to acknowledge that Africans and Europeans were co-conspirators in the enslavement of our ancestors. Neither one of them should be let off the hook. They are both complicit. They are both to blame. I put them equally as co-conspirators because without the African, there would be no transatlantic chattel slave trade, just like without the European, there would be no transatlantic chattel slave trade. They work
Well,
together.
let me tell you this. Have you not heard any of the speeches from the African leaders acknowledging that? Even Ghana had acknowledged that.
Well,
Have you not heard
yeah,
that?
let me answer that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, you know, what then is the limit in terms
Yes,
of how do you respond to different things? Look,
I
let's
want to
just
respond to that.
understand this. Let's
All
just
right.
understand this in terms of what my beliefs are and what I believe, because I know that you're bringing in kind of a social construct and dynamic, and a dynamic that's a little bit more to that. And we all need to acknowledge that. Now, what is happening on the African continent is that people are acknowledging their role in the transatlantic slave trade. Yes. And what is also happening is that there are other countries whose heads of states have acknowledged that and have expressed the ability for us to come together. But that also depends on us if we're going to acknowledge that. So there's an acknowledgement on both sides. Do we continue to stay with the pain, or do we look forward in order to build?
Yes,
And
and
I would argue,
I want to respond to
that
that.
a lot of our people, we just want to continue in the pain because honestly, it's easy just to stay in pain rather than to build with one another. It's
Let me
easy.
say
I
this.
can get, go ahead.
Yes, and I'll try to make my response as brief as possible so we could go step by step. If you notice, nothing I said have anything to do with emotion. I actually have been to my ancestral village in Cameroon myself.
Okay.
I visited my tribe. It's the Tikar tribe, Tikar. So what I'm saying has nothing to do with emotions. My point is, even though certain African leaders have acknowledged their role in transatlantic chattel slavery, they have not done enough to redeem themselves or to compensate or to pay restitution to the descendants of the transatlantic chattel slave trade. In fact, you could even say Europeans and Caucasians have acknowledged their role in the transatlantic chattel slave trade, but they have not done enough to compensate the descendants of transatlantic chattel slavery. Or in other words,
Well, then I
lips.
would
All
argue
right, go
this,
ahead.
and I would argue this. So, what does that compensation look like? You see what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah, I can answer
So
that.
how can
I
we
can answer that.
define that compensation?
Yes,
And
and
these
I'll answer.
and these compensations, I think we're trying to put things together because we want to have a quick, solid answer. And it's not a quick, solid answer, especially when they aren't in control of what they even are able to do. And I
Well, I
think
can
that we
answer with
have to
how it
truly
looks though.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yes, it looks like citizenship in these African nations, citizenship by descent, number one. Land rights, number two. Monetary compensation, number three. Mineral rights, number four. Free education and African nations, number five. And if anyone else has any other suggestions, we can take them into consideration. But there are definitely things that these African nations can do to compensate the descendants of U.S. chattel slaves. Or, in other words, we have to negotiate with the Africans the same exact way that we are negotiating with the U.S. government. And all of the other captors and enslavers of our ethnicity.
So who's to tell you that that's not happening right now? Who's to tell you that those
Well, name a
interests
country.
aren't being discussed right now? No, I'm
No,
not going to
no,
name a
I'm not saying they
country.
haven't been
I'm not going
discussed.
to name a country because you want to know why. When you start to name a
Uh,
country and you start to put those things on out here on the YouTube streets, then guess what you're doing? You're setting up, you're setting people up for, oh, these person's going to do this. Oh, this person's going to do that. No, trust. There's a process to this.
well, brother, let's
Now,
not make
I
this
would, I would,
conversation
I would ask you
contentious,
this.
though.
I would
All
ask you
right, go
this,
ahead.
and I would argue this with you. If you would like to be part of that process, I have a course on out there. It's Neo Diplomatic Core Cohort 2025. You can
Yes,
go
and I.
ahead and you can research that. And if you want to be a
Mhm.
part of that, trust me, I would love for you to be a part of that. There is a process to that. And those
Yes,
discussions have been happening and they have been going on for the last 2 years, at least in my neck of the woods.
no, I'm not
How
disagreeing with that, and I appreciate your offer. But the point is, the compensation has not been disseminated to the
okay, now
descendants
now
of
now
your
let me
chattel
now
slave.
let me tell you this. Now let me tell you this. What would then be the standard of compensation?
Well, I just listed five. If you have any other
But
ones,
what
I
would be
listen.
okay, so how do you transfer those mineral rights? How do you get people on over there do you see what I'm saying? There's more of a logistical effort. Those sound good in terms of practical theory of, let me just throw it on out there. You now have a logistics operations that has to go on because now how do you then ensure that there's some sort of fungibility with the value of those minerals, and who do you value it under? You see what I'm
I
saying?
could give you an
I, and I
example.
and I don't and I
Oh,
don't and I because I'm going to tell you this. We don't have that much time to go through that because it would be counterpoint after counterpoint after counterpoint. Because trust and believe, if you haven't read my book, The Rise of Africa, the Continent, the Diaspora and Bricks, I go over just a topical portion, and I could have literally wrote another 150 pages to provide other anecdotal analysis. And now, even in this time frame of a US dollar collapsing and a swift system that's actually starting to polarize with BRICS payment and RMB, now there's even a more complicated factor that's occurring. And I mean, I understand what you're saying, and yes, that's the core of the matter. However, there's a little bit more of the nuances that have to be in place because demands are great. We know the demands, they know our demands. But there's always a diplomatic effort that has to be focused. Because why? Because there is a give and take. There is a give and take. And yes, those people that told us, guess what? They got lied to too. Everybody got lied to. And
hold
that
on,
is
brother.
really the effort that we have to start to understand because if we do not have the empathy that's needed to even discuss that, then guess what? Your negotiations have already failed.
Well, hold on, brother. Let me just say this. Just like we don't have compassion for our European enslavers, I have no compassion for our African captors and
Well,
our
well
African
then, well then
enslavers.
I appreciate it and thank you for letting
Yeah,
your
can I
this
can
your
I
your
can I
thoughts be
just have
known.
a chat with this
Hold,
Because if you
gentleman?
didn't know what Q2UA stands for, it stands for Quest to Unite Africa. It's not Quest to denigrate Africa.
yes,
So,
and
but I appreciate it.
before I pass
And,
the mic,
I'll move you to the back.
Yeah,
So,
I wish I had a chance to talk to this gentleman, but he's in the back anyway. You know, my family is African, and I have experienced the pain of meeting my family and my bloodline family from where I was taken, and the tears and the pain from their side as well as my side shows contriteness, and we have to look beyond this what if we're because we're in a dire situation right now. I think the most imperative thing for us to sort out, Brother Karras, is to sort out getting connections with our people and getting back to that
but,
land, and
but,
then
but,
working out the rest later.
I didn't want to really go through all of that in terms of, there's certain things and certain nuances that I have with doing things on Q2UA and doing things on Covenant Awakenings. There's
Yeah,
certain dealings. And
yeah,
the
but
reality is that on my Mondays and my Fridays, that's literally when I'm able to take the time
yeah,
off and actually open up the program. And I'm telling people this throughout the week. I'm telling people this throughout the week. And understand, do not be confused about what it is that you desire. But the problem is, I'm sorry, there's a biblical text that explains everything that we need to do in order to do it so we're not vexing each other. Because
exactly.
everybody
You
has
can't sit
been
down in front.
lied to in this
Yeah, yeah,
manner.
of
And
course
if
they
you
were.
can't even have the basic understanding of how that goes, then you're not even providing a realistic template of of coming together as a people. So yes, if your heart is still stony, if your heart is I need to have mine and I need to get my lick, then you're talking like a 13 and 14-year old because
He wouldn't
I see
survive
it
10
every single
seconds on the
day.
continent. We're not with
Yeah,
that attitude.
exactly. So what that actually is that that's dangerous because why? Because if your thought process is like that, then what you become the European colonizer, and he literally said it. He said that with his own mouth. He wants to become the European colonizer.
He shot himself
He
right
shot
in the
himself in the
foot.
foot. That's why. That's
In
why.
the foot.
Look,
Because
yeah.
if you ever see my personal posts under my Gentile name, you see me moving among the African diaspora. I'm talking to them and they're talking to me. And we're like family. It doesn't matter whether it's Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and everybody. You
So,
know, I've been
so
to
let me.
places. I've been
So
to
let me
places,
let me
Brother Carey.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I've been to places where my wife's diaspora comes from, and they feel that I'm from the Fanti tribe because they're not very good at speaking the indigenous languages, even some of the well-educated ones, because I'm not 100% fluent in my wife's language. But wherever I go, even at my workplace, the guys look at me as more Ghanaian and more African than they do from my Jamaican background. And I think it's a positive thing because I don't have this Western mindset that I'm entitled to get A, B, and C, and they must give me this. And when
Hmm.
I go in, I'm the most predominant person, despite the family that I'm married into. I humble myself and and
Yes.
and this is what is
What does the
lacking.
words even say? The meek shall inherit the earth. You know
Yeah,
what? And I would invite that brother. Look, just read Psalms 25. We covered that yesterday on
he's
Covenant
not helping
Awakenings.
himself, and
Exactly.
if we have to leave tomorrow and they go into Africa with that mindset, the people are going to hate him, and some might turn on them and be physical with
Okay.
them and even kill them.
So he's actually showing what 90% of our people would have to do. We would have to literally be put in concentration camps for our benefit. And I'm not saying the concentration camps of like World War II, World War III. No, let me qualify this. I'm talking about being able to come into isolated areas so we are able to heal and we're able to understand and to understand the level of empathy before you go on out into a community. Because if your heart is that way, that I need to seek retribution, well, understand why you were put in that position. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, you
And mulatto. I
you
wanted to get
cannot
that
have that.
understanding, but I also understood the under. Look, everybody. Look, 65% of African American males have mulatto in them. 65%.
Even
You can
even
do that
me,
on
I'm over
African
89%
ancestry.
African. I've got I've got
Exactly.
I've got the same as you. I've got the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, UK,
Exactly.
Ireland. and it shows our migration patterns as well as the influence of slavery on us
Hmm.
and how we travel. Because how come we have the Lemba marker from Angola and Zimbabwe and
Yeah.
South Africa, and we got all the Bantu markers coming down to West Africa and European markers? Because we're a transient people. Even Egyptian we've got in our DNA, ancient Egyptian. So this argument of race and us differentiation between us and Africans is completely different. My father-in-law's DNA almost looks the same as mine, and he never
Hmm.
left us for one day.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
and I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to tell you this. I'm happy that that he took an interest in this channel now because you're absolute because I'm seeing the folks in the chat, but the reality is that they're scared. Don't think that it's just the Caucasians; it's also our people that had that Caucasian mindset. They're scared. They're scared because as they see their counterparts being cut off, they're going to get cut off. They're scared because what they thought they had a root in power and a baseline power that was a fallacy to begin with, they're seeing it erode. So now they also understand that the only root of power that they literally can go to, which is Africa, which is the door that's open, you know, I don't want to even invest time in a container. I just want to dictate to things. I'm sorry, understand. Listen, your position of power is that you have none. We have none. And that's
and
okay because the most
relationships.
high, yes, because the
Sorry to cut
go
you,
ahead.
but relationships in Africa is a social relation exchange
Bingo.
relationship. You have
Bingo.
to give in order to get.
What is that, George? Please explain that because maybe this is a perspective that our brothers and sisters here in the United States need to get. If you can explain that again.
In Africa, the relationships amongst the Bantu people is a relationship in is a social exchange relationship. You give something in order to get something, and if you give small, you might likely get something back bigger than what you've given.
Yeah, come on.
And I can testify to that because I did a little kindness for someone, and I got into the Ghanaian community until I found myself a wife there, until we got other stuff there, and people just give to us bigger, and that you have to give something. That's why it's important. I got hit financially really badly. I was hoping to be able to do something massive, but yeah, he's able. Even if it's $1, give $1. You can afford it. The price of a McDonald's meal, give it to the community. Give it to
Mm,
get this project off the ground. And once you've given something, and even that container, you're going to get back something bigger from Burkina Faso. You don't know that Ibrahim Traore might see that container and say, you know what, guys, I'm going to give you so much to do work on a project for me. And then that could
hmm.
take the whole community one time out of poverty, and other world leaders will see it over there, right? Because not all of them wear the aprons with the red and blue trimming and belong to these
Hmm.
groups, right? They will look at you and put you in positions of power because you are the people with the skills
Hmm.
and you know how to deal with these Europeans. You might end up getting invited to be ambassadors, trade in their trade missions, and so on. They'll include you in it.
Mm,
Because once they see that you have an open heart, it's not like European culture where you have to be born in it and look a certain way. Once you're accepted into like how you were accepted into Burkina Faso, they see you now as part of their tribe.
mm,
They see you as part of
mm.
their own people. And once you get a few things done in there, there's nothing that you can't go and ask for. You can even stand before their chiefs and their kings, and they will listen to you because it gives you influence. And that's why the course is important for those of you who've never dealt with anything on the continent to know how to use your mouth and social relationships to get things done. So it's a very important course. Very important course. They don't teach you that in university.
No,
You
they
either,
don't.
you either have to be born with the gift or someone has to teach you.
Mm, come on now. Come
But I
on
was
now.
fortunate enough to be a half decent musician, and I started playing with African bands because I liked the music. I had hundreds of African CDs, and then I started interacting with them and eating their food as a teenager, and in my 20s, and I started to see that they were no different from us, no different
Mm,
from us at all. They're loud like us, they argue like us, their behavior is like us. Don't be fooled. Don't get it twisted. But in order to reintegrate yourself, you have to, give to get. I know, yeah, Abraham. Yeah, I've seen what God says that
hmm
Abraham Traore has asked the diaspora to be ambassadors in the last speech that he had with the diaspora. That's
Come
what they
on
want
now.
us to do. They want us to promote Africa in a positive light. And the Pan African movement, I'm afraid, is not the way to do it. You know,
Hmm
they haven't worked over 100 years since Marcus Garvey founded it. It's only the Most High that's going to help us, and this is what this group is about. It's a group of Hebrews that have joined together, that want to work together, that basically want to go home.
Now, do you understand how powerful what we're doing is here? Look, don't think that, and I keep telling that to our people in Q2UA. Don't think that we're not being watched. We are. We're very powerful because once the ball gets rolling, understand people are going to be showing up and people are going to get mad and people are going to get angry. That's how that goes. But just and this was not a paid advertisement by Brother Asaph whatsoever. Thank you, Brother Asaph. This was not a paid. Look, part of this thing is diplomacy. That diplomatic effort, I'm telling you. And what Brother Asaph just said, it's a gift, but you never know what that gift turns out to be. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And I know our people are scared. I get it. It's okay to be scared of the unknown. I get it. But being scared and then being unrepentant, I'm sorry. Yes, we were punished. If you don't even understand and recognize that that was a punishment, then I don't even know why you're on this channel to begin with. We were given over to our enemies because of what? Because of the covenant that we broke. We were scattered to the
I'm
four
very sorry
corners.
that, sorry to cut in, but I'm very sorry that I had a disappointment, because I'd have volunteered to be a full-time ambassador, and then if you say if you say to me, Brother Asaf, I needed to go to South Africa this month, or I needed to go to Angola this month, I could have picked up and I could have just gone, without even
Hmm
thinking twice. But yeah, he's able, but he sees that I want to do the work, and it would help a lot, because of my interactions and dealings with the people on the continent, and also
hmm
my assembly has returned quite a few Mores back to Angola, back to Zimbabwe, back to Nigeria, back to Ghana, and we have members of my assembly that successfully relocated back to these places that were never
hmm
born there. And these things are fantastic. We need to start doing the groundwork. Give what you can, even if it's $1. I'm sure you can afford to do that. Click on it, give $1. We have to give something in order to get something, and that's how it works. And we also have to be careful how we negotiate with them as well. We can't be going in there making big demands and acting like we're the boss. It doesn't work like that. African culture does not work like that.
That's why we're
The
learning our
more humble
culture
that you can
again.
become, the more humble that you can be, the better it is for you. Because my
That's right.
family, my wife's family, is a royal family. And when I
Mm,
see my brother-in-laws, I have more respect for them than the King of England. You know, even though they don't like it, and sometimes I address my wife as Your Royal Highness, but she thinks I'm being sarky when I do it, but it's out of respect.
hmm
And my sister-in-law, Your Royal Highness, out of your respect, because they have the clout that's on the place that I want to go.
Absolutely.
And not
Absolutely.
only that, I have more respect where my wife's country is than even Jamaica, where I went to school. I went to one of the best private schools in Jamaica, even though I was born in England. But I'm more comfortable with my own people and being away from as far away as from Europeans as possible. My desire is to wake up one morning and only see the ones that are righteous, the handful that are on the continent. But we
hmm
must give in order to get. I'll shut up now, brother.
Absolutely. No, that's wonderful because I was gonna have you if you want to do final comments because Brother Garth, if you can also put the link in the chat for the container. We're still moving on this container. Understand, family, I know it is a big ask. It is 50,000 to get a container to move overseas. It's a big ask, especially as we are getting the the power of the dollar sucked away from us. The costs are rising. But as the costs are rising, folks are panicking. And our people are panicking. We can't just be going around there and doing what our enemies have done. That power is not you learned and it was given a firsthand case study back on April 2nd when quote unquote Liberation Day took place. That was the case study. And now we see what that case study has look like. And that's leading to their economic imperil. They're being economically imperiled by their Liberation Day. So, Brother Asaph, thank you again for coming on. I appreciate this. This is a blessing because the African diaspora family, yes, the U.S. does. We are kind of the tip of the spear. We are the shining object, right? We do hold the most amount of weight, but understand our actions literally drive other nations. Think about this. We have a power to literally influence every nation here on this earth. But to be quite honest, we don't think about that because we get too caught up in feelings. And I love those straw man arguments. You don't have to emotionalize. It's not emotional. Yes, it is. When you usually get those straw man arguments, that's when it's like, okay. So when the accusations come through, okay.
Well, I would like to thank you very much for having me stumbling on verbally on your platform. It's been a baruch, it's been a blessing to speak to the diaspora wherever they are once again. And I will remind everyone that this isn't about us, it's about
hmm
the whole
That's right.
diaspora moving. as one,
Yes.
which is our problem. The Japanese have their karetsu, which is their conglomerations that's move as one. The Europeans have one, but we don't have one. And
Hmm.
Q2UA is the first one that we have that is a Bible based one that is not going to rip you off. It's run by Hebrews who want to open doors, and
Hmm.
whatever you have, even if it's $1, just give it today, and just keep it move this thing moving, because we have become comfortable. We make do in the lands of our captivity. During slavery, we made comforts out of the things that we found around us and in our community. But this is different now. We are getting kicked out of the places that we are now, and it's time for us to start thinking strategically. I'll end there.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, brother Asaph. I appreciate it. All right. Well, family. Yeah. Wow. 3 hours, just about. And, I've been sitting here. I need to go see my dad real quick to take care of some business. But family, I'm making this appeal to you all. I know, even if you don't have the means, ask our people to support. Sometimes it's also about just talking to our people. And I know that our people right now, they want to find out if there's an opportunity on out there, just somewhere, somehow. Because if you didn't know, this shipping thing isn't looking too good, especially with China. So I don't know about you all, but what we have been discussing has been that inevitable conclusion. And this inevitable conclusion, we have been uniquely positioned to do something awesome about it. So, with that said, family, I'm going to get up on out of here. Thank you all for spending almost 3 hours with me today. I'm blessed to be able to do that. And with that said, most time willing, I'll be back on to Monday. And please stick around because Brother Garth will be on here in a few minutes with Exploring the Motherland. And with that said, family, shalom and salama.